The room in Rome was silent, but it was not empty. The air felt heavy, as if something unseen was holding its breath. On one side of the table sat an ordinary-looking woman, her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on the floor. Across from her stood an elderly priest, thin, calm, carrying decades of stories no one else wanted to hear. When he began to pray in Latin, her breathing changed. Her body stiffened. And then, in a voice that did not sound like her own, she spoke the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I am Satan." For Father Gabriele Amorth, this was not a shocking moment. It was simply another afternoon. Long before he became the most famous exorcist in the modern world, Gabriele Amorth was born in 1925 in Modena, northern Italy, into a deeply Catholic family. His childhood unfolded in a country slowly being consumed by political fanaticism and war. As a young man, he witnessed how fear could turn neighbors into enemies, and how ideology could strip people of their humanity. During World War II, he joined the Italian resistance against fascism. That experience shaped him forever. He later said that when you have seen human beings commit cruelty in the name of power, it becomes easier to believe that evil is not just an idea, but a force that moves through people. After the war, Amorth studied law. He could have built a comfortable career, but instead he chose the priesthood. He entered the seminary and was ordained, spending years as a relatively unknown cleric. He wrote for Catholic publications, worked in parishes, and lived a life that seemed ordinary, at least from the outside. Nothing about those early decades suggested that he would one day become the Vatican's frontline warrior, against what he believed were literal demons. In the Catholic Church, exorcism has always existed, but it has always been treated carefully. It is one of the least understood and most controversial rituals in the faith. By the 20th century, most dioceses had no official exorcist at all. Psychological and medical explanations had replaced spiritual ones in most cases. Many priests preferred not to think about possession at all. That changed in Rome in the mid-1980s. In 1986, Gabriele Amorth was appointed exorcist for the Diocese of Rome. It was not a prestigious role. It was one few priests wanted. The job meant dealing with people who were desperate, terrified, and often deeply disturbed. Many arrived convinced that something inside them was not human. Others were sent by family members who had no idea what else to do. Amorth approached his new role with caution. He insisted that anyone who came to him first be evaluated by doctors and psychiatrists. He openly said that most people who believed they were possessed were actually suffering from mental or emotional illness. But he also believed that a small number of cases could not be explained that way. One of those cases was a woman known publicly only as Rosa. Rosa would come to his office in the late afternoon. The room was simple and quiet. There were no dramatic props, no theatrical rituals. Just a chair, a table, and a priest with a book of prayers. When Amorth began to recite the exorcism rite in Latin, Rosa's body would change. Her head would jerk violently. Her eyes would roll back. Her voice would deepen into something that sounded ancient and hostile. She would snarl and shout blasphemies. At times, she would laugh. During one of these sessions, she claimed to be Satan himself. Amorth did not panic. He had learned that fear made things worse. He continued praying, calmly repeating the words, commanding whatever he believed was present to leave. After the session ended, Rosa would often collapse in exhaustion. When she recovered, she described feeling as if something had been lifted from her chest. The relief was temporary, but real enough that she kept coming back. Over time, Rosa underwent dozens of sessions. She later said that each one brought her closer to peace. Whether her experiences were spiritual, psychological, or something in between, Amorth was convinced he was witnessing a genuine battle. As word spread, more people began to arrive. Some came from Rome, others travelled from distant parts of Italy. A few came from other countries. They brought stories of nightmares, voices, uncontrollable movements, violent impulses, and strange sensations. Many said they had experimented with occult practices, seances, or rituals. Amorth believed these activities opened doors to something dark. His first exorcism on his own had been terrifying. A young woman who had participated in a satanic ritual began screaming when he started praying. Her strength seemed unnatural. She cursed in languages she had never studied. Amorth later admitted he had been afraid. But he also felt something else, a sense that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Over the years, he developed his own criteria for what he considered true possession. He looked for specific signs, an aversion to sacred objects, knowledge the person could not have, and reactions to prayers spoken in Latin. He never claimed these were scientific, but he trusted his experience. By his own count, Amorth performed hundreds of exorcisms every year. He claimed to have conducted tens of thousands over his lifetime, though the exact number is impossible to verify. What is certain is that no other modern priest became so publicly associated with the practice. Some of the cases he described sounded like scenes from horror films. He spoke of a boy who lifted himself off the ground during a session, another who required several grown men to hold him down. Some patients expelled nails, glass, or pieces of metal from their mouths. Amorth collected these objects, not as trophies, but as what he believed were physical traces of the battle he was fighting. To many in the scientific community, these stories were deeply troubling. Psychiatrists warned that extreme stress, hysteria, and dissociation could explain much of what he described. They argued that suggestion and belief could cause the body to behave in shocking ways. Amorth listened to those criticisms, but he never accepted them fully. He insisted that psychology could not explain everything. In his view, modern society had become blind to spiritual danger. As he grew more famous, his opinions became more outspoken. He claimed that Satan was active in politics, that war and corruption were driven by demonic influence. He criticized popular culture, arguing that books and films about magic were dangerous. He even said that practices like yoga could be spiritually harmful because they came from non-Christian traditions. These statements made him controversial, even within the church. Some priests quietly distanced themselves. Others supported him, believing that he was simply saying what many were afraid to admit. One of the most disturbing stories associated with Amorth involved a case that had nothing to do with exorcism at all. In 1983, a 15-year-old girl named Emanuela Orlandi disappeared in Vatican City. The case became one of Italy's greatest mysteries. Decades later, Amorth suggested that her disappearance was connected to sexual abuse and a cover-up inside the Vatican. He claimed that her family had been silenced. These allegations shocked the Catholic world. No definitive proof was ever produced, but in 2023, the Vatican reopened the investigation. For many, it felt like a shadow from Amorth's past reaching into the present. Despite the controversy, his influence grew. In 1990, he co-founded the International Association of Exorcists, an organization recognized by the Church to train and support priests who performed the ritual. It eventually included hundreds of members from dozens of countries. Amorth also embraced modern technology. He said he performed exorcisms over the phone and even through video calls. To critics, this sounded absurd. To him, prayer was not limited by distance. By the time he reached his 80s, requests for help had exploded. Italian media reported a dramatic rise in the number of people who believed they were possessed. Some psychiatrists blamed social anxiety and cultural fear. Amorth saw it as proof that something dark was spreading. In 2016, Father Gabriele Amorth died in Rome at the age of 91. He left behind books, recordings, and thousands of testimonies from people who believed he had saved them. Whether he was a brave defender of faith or a man misinterpreting human suffering remains a matter of debate. What is certain is that he changed the way the modern world looks at exorcism. Even now, years after his death, people still line up outside churches in Rome, searching for answers to experiences they cannot explain. And somewhere between belief and doubt, the legacy of the Vatican's most famous exorcist continues to whisper. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this. Like the video, share it, and leave a comment with your suggestions for future themes or historical figures you would like to see explored.